Hey everyone, welcome back to the Wedding Lands Lounge podcast. So excited that you are here tuning in today. I have my friend Paige here, and this is a little bit of a different type of episode, and let me explain why. But before I get into that, Paige, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone?
Hello, everyone. My name is Paige Griffith. I am the owner and lead attorney behind the Legal Paige. We are a legal education platform for small business owners and, of course, photographers like yourself that's probably
Yes.
listening in. We sell contract templates, but we have a lot of free education. That is my entire mission and purpose behind what we do is I want you to get really good legal information, quick, readily accessible, and one that you don't have to go down a Google rabbit hole. So we have blogs and podcasts and YouTube videos as well, lots of free resources. And I also have a law firm on the side where I do a little bit of one-on-one client work in the intellectual property space, so trademarks and copyrights primarily. That's a little bit about my job. Myself, though, I am from Montana, so it's like that state that everyone hears about, but they don't know very many people who live there. I have been here my whole life.
You're not wrong.
I'm not a transplant since, Yellowstone kind of popped Montana off on the map. But yeah, I am here with my family, my husband, and my two kids. And we love living the outdoor recreational life when I'm not behind a computer working. But it's a beautiful way to, be able to be a mom, but also enjoy my family and the space around me. And that's basically it. I also I have a very long background in photography. So I was a photographer. I have since kind of closed the doors to the profitable side of photography, and now I definitely just do it as a hobby.
Oh,
Back
good for
to the
you.
passion. I wasn't able to really manage both to be three businesses once I decided to
Yeah.
launch this. So I kind of slowed down with photography. It was definitely more of like a full-time gig. I would say up until about 2019, 2020. And then we all know what happened then. And so I thought that was like a really good transitional time for me. But that gives me a lot of different expertise than other lawyers in this online space and, virtual contract space as well, where I know what it's like to be in your shoes. I know the pain points and the client situations that come up, everything from just sessions, but also to big events like weddings and other, brand shoots and things that you might do as well. So I like to kind of combine both of my expertises into one, which is I think where we shine the best with the products that we have in our shop because they're really thorough, but they're really understandable from a photographer standpoint, but also from a client standpoint. So that's a little bit about me.
Love it. Love it all. I love the point too about Montana. Like you're not wrong. Like you literally are the only person that I've probably met that I know is from Montana personally. So
There's a few people who have moved here since 2020, if you know what I mean. And so
yeah.
I don't know. I just always like to clarify that I've been here my whole
Like
life.
this is my state. This is my state, people.
We are all a little possessive over our state now, I would say.
So Yellowstone kind of made it a little challenging with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think lots of states experience that over the past 4 years of,
Yeah.
they have a lot of people moving from other states that people are trying to get out of. And people are just looking for a different way of life. And that can definitely be found here, to be very frank. So yeah, I understand why people want to move here, but it has certainly impacted us as locals in terms
Yeah.
of just cost of living, housing prices, all of that good stuff that we all know is super
Oh
fun to
yeah.
talk about, but we won't get into that here.
Oh gosh, I hate it. It's fine. Well, thank you for sharing all of that information about you. So I mean, I'm curious, and I'm sure other people are curious as well. So you used to be a photographer, and now you do stuff that's correlated with law. Now, did you have your law degree or an experience before you got into photography? Tell me a little bit about that background of your life.
Yeah, it all happened at the same time because I thought it would be a stellar idea to start a photography business while I was in
Do it
law
all.
school. So my first year of law school, you're just in the weeds and the trenches, and all I had done was academics my whole life, just
Uh,
from high school to college to law school. I never stopped. And by that point, I had always had like a creative side to me. I have a background in theater and speech and debate, and I love to like scrapbook back
Oh, that's fun.
when I love to sew. I'm just a random human. So
So
like, you know,
just do it
home ec
all.
was my jam. Um, and I always really truly had this deep desire to kind of get into photography. I tried in college to dabble, but it wasn't the right time and the right fit. And I actually came back to my hometown. So I was out in Washington for law or for undergrad, and then when I came back, I came to law school in Montana in my hometown. And I was like, this could be a really fun creative outlet for me, just so that I can get away from everything that I'm dealing with in law school, because law school truly is a full-time job, at least for the first year or two.
I
And then you
believe
can
it.
kind of get the hang of it, and, you can start doing some part-time work on the side. Some people do, some people don't. But I started my photography business, and honestly, it lit me up inside. I realized how much I love entrepreneurship, and I knew
Hmm.
I loved business, but I never like studied business or really did anything. I was like the lemonade stand kid, let's be real though. So I knew that I could be an
It's been a
entrepreneur if
part of
I
your
wanted
life.
to.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of you are nodding heads like, yes, we've been there. We all know that we have this like deep rooted, we need to run our own businesses
Oh yeah.
within us. And so when I loved that part of running the photography business, I feel like I was honestly very good at the business side of things. And that really helped my photography as well. Not to say that I wasn't really good at taking photos too, but I think it takes both, right? Like you can be an amazing artist and creative, but you also need to have the business side really locked down and figured
Yeah.
out, and workflows and that kind of thing. So I worked on that through law school, and within like a year or two, it kind of became a full-time job. But it was nice. It really helped me like get through law school with, out without having to take on a ton of debt. I still
Mm,
had some, but not a ton, which was great. And just, it was great. I feel like side by side with it. Um, and so that was like 3 years of building my business. I really started getting into the wedding and event space. That was nice. Like in the summers here in Montana is when it's busy season. And so it was kind of during off season with school. And so then I could really make money and utilize my passions and do that in the summer. And then I went and worked for a federal judge with a clerkship 2 years after law school.
dang.
I worked for some firms during law school as well. So I was just a busy bee back then. I didn't have kids, and I feel like I,
You were, yeah, dang,
we
that's
all,
crazy.
it's a really good time back in those days. You're like, I really did have a lot of time to do all the things. Um, and yeah, so I continued my photography business while I was working for a federal judge, and got a lot of good experience kind of behind the curtains in district court, and really seeing what the law was like firsthand in front of a judge. And then that was kind of my pivotal moment. So this was 2018. And I'll never forget sitting down with this judge. I've said this on podcasts before, and I will forever look back at this moment in time and be like, I am so glad he was a mentor in my life then, because he came into my office across from his chambers, and we were looking at firms that I could go work for and set up interviews with, or he knew I had this other passion, and he was just like, I really think you should do something different with your law degree.
Hmm.
You're young, and it was kind of this permission slip to not do the track that everyone else was on.
Wow.
It's like this train you can't get off of when you're just in academia, and then you go to a clerkship, and then you're supposed to like go the partner track at a firm and like do trial work and litigation and all of that. And I wanted to, and I thought that that was my path, but photography honestly is a catalyst to lead me in a different direction in life. And so I started the Legal Page, which was really just like a blog way back when. And since then, it has grown. From 2018 to 2020 was really nice to kind of get established online. So I was one of the first virtual legal platforms, contract shops, law firms that had really gone online. Of course, there were others, but not as many as there are today, because then 2020 happened, and we were just at the right place at the right time with the right resources. The whole industry needed assistance, and I was really able to help. And then since then, it's just been 4 years of growing the business. And I now have employees across the US, contractors in various states. We serve tens of thousands of business owners, and it's so cool. It's just like a beautiful marriage of all of the things that I love to do while utilizing my law degree that was important in my life and that I,
Yeah.
worked hard to get. So that's my background with photography and the law and how they kind of went together.
Dang, I have like so much to say about all of that. First, I want to say congrats to you because that is amazing that you first of all listened to the judge and when he gave you that advice, because I'm sure that's not said to a lot of individuals that he's had work under him, because there's not a lot of, because when you think about law and you think about photography, it's almost like they're on two opposite ends of the spectrum in regards to like how you use your brain. you know like with law, it's so rigid and factual and like this is what it is. And with
Yeah.
photography, there's like that beautiful creative side of life that comes with that. And it's amazing what you did with both of those at the same time. I'm just mind blown by it, to be honest. like,
Well,
like how
thanks. There
cool.
are others who have done it, actually. It's really funny
Really.
that there's just so many people in this world. And when you
You can
connect with
outrun.
people that kind of have similar passions, and then you're like, wait, you kind of did the same thing I did. And that's so fun to be like, you think you're this weirdly unique unicorn of a human
One of
and
a
no one can
kind.
ever
Yeah.
relate. And then they
Yeah.
can. So it honestly it was a great time in my life to look back on that. And how crazy, now you're like, God, that was a long time ago. I'm dating myself. I'm like 10 years ago
Wow.
is when I was really getting started in the entrepreneur space, really service based,
Yeah. Yeah.
entrepreneur space. And honestly, that is when I started realizing the more I got into it, like I started going to conferences and I started working with a bunch of clients and then going to weddings and events and meeting other vendors and just really is realizing like no one had their crap together on the back end and like no one really knew what they were doing legally. And so I was able to like give advice or like give little suggestions here and there. And that's really how it all kind of started.
Wow. That's really cool. Listen, I give you so much credit for just going through law school. Like I have a master's in
It's
business,
not
but
easy.
the one class I literally had to retake was business law. And that was like
Oh no.
business law 101. like,
It's
like
like that's what I do every day now.
right. I'm like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I pass like a basic business law class in college that I
I feel
literally
like
had
they
to
always make it
retake?
way harder in college. I don't know
Yeah.
why, but I feel like they make those classes like way too difficult. They don't need to be that difficult. And I'm
Gosh,
sure it
it
was
was a
like
struggle.
archaic books that have like all this legal jargon and like how are you supposed to know? So, yeah,
Yeah, it was
law
not
school
fun.
was not a not an easy time, but it
It's
was
not for
really
the faint
fun.
of
I
heart.
honestly really liked law school.
Well, that's good. Yeah, because you, if you didn't, then I mean, think about it, you probably wouldn't be where you are today. But also, that would be a lot of school that would be miserable.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, it's not the best, but you can make it better than lots of people say it is.
oh, absolutely. Yeah, you have to make it enjoyable if that's something you really want, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So I know that you've probably had, I can't imagine how many conversations you've had with other photographers about the struggles that they've endured with contracts and like the fear behind not having like a legitimate contract. So my like first question for you is what are some of the common mistakes that photographers make when it comes to having a contract for their clients?
Yeah, I think the very first thing is they just don't have a contract, like, at all.
Like it's
Um,
non-existent. Okay.
yeah, it's, like, non-existent, and here's why. I think we all get started in photography or the service-based industry. I was literally just over at a friend's house. One of my, like, side favorite things to do is help people get started with their businesses.
I
I'm
love
not
that.
a business coach, but I've been doing this a while, and so, like, friends in town will reach out to me and just ask, like, "Hey, can I take you to coffee or like pick your ear. And this person was like starting a business from scratch. And it was so fun to just sit down and be like, these are all the most important things you need to do. Legal, of course, back end stuff, and then front facing stuff. Like really, you just need like a website and an Instagram account and you're good to go.
Right.
But of course, she didn't have a contract. And I asked, like, well, what are you going to do when people want to book you? And she was like, I'm just going to like get the invoice and send it over. So that is always a problem, is I think
Yeah.
people have the best of intentions when they first get started. They're working with family, they're working with friends, they're building their portfolio, especially in the photography industry, and they're not using contracts. And honestly, I can kind of guarantee that those are actually probably going to be some of your most sticky situations, because they are going to push your boundaries. You can get walked all over. You are going to do way too much. You're going to over deliver to an extent that it could potentially burn you out in the beginning.
That's a
And so
good point.
don't do that. So have a contract. Even a really basic contract is fine. Just have something.
You're right.
And
Just those
then
parameters.
from there, I think you can build upon your business. I know you can find contracts like in a CRM system or something along those lines. I know we're going to talk about that, but it's just a good starting place. I just want you to have something, right? Like, please just don't have nothing. And
Right.
then as you go on in your business journey, you're going to start realizing the importance of contracts. And I'm here to, like, of course, tell you a lot of those on this episode. But I'm a realist, and I understand that there's overhead in various capacities when you start a photography business. I just want you to have a contract in place, the basics, right? Like the fees that need to be paid, some canceling and rescheduling policies, like something about your delivery of the product and them saving the product, that kind of stuff, like basics about the services that you're offering. So that's the main one. The next one is they don't sign the contract themselves. This has been this weird thing that I see popping up in our Facebook community. And
Interesting.
I'm like, it's a workflow issue. So you're sending the contract to the client. And I always suggest that the client signs first, because you're like opening the door to having a conversation surrounding your business policies that are in your contract. There might be changes that need to be made, or they have questions or concerns. And so allow that to occur, and then they'll sign, and then you sign. And a lot of times it gets lost in the shuffle where you forget to sign, and then the contract isn't even valid, because I'm sure there's a provision in there that's like, this contract is not effective until both parties sign. All parties sign.
Super simple thing there. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not you kind of have an implied contract. There's some like contractual defenses that you can use there to it being a valid contract, but like you don't need to have that issue. So always please sign your contracts after your clients sign. And then the last one, I would say, I know we kind of touched on like making sure that you have important clauses in your contract, and we can discuss that further. But the last one is they just don't understand their contract thoroughly. So that's a big mistake. You have a contract, but you don't really know why you have that contract and what that contract is doing for you in terms of protection. So really go through your contract, just read it and make sure that you understand certain sections. If you don't understand certain sections, I can guarantee your client doesn't understand that section, and that's just
That's
not
true.
good. There's no
Right.
meeting of the minds. You're not going to like have a mutual understanding of why you signed that provision to begin with. So just read through it, make sure that it's not super legal jargon heavy. It doesn't need to be anymore. Lawyers are trained to write in plain language, and that is going to only benefit you if you have an issue with interpreting your contract or a dispute later on. If it's confusing, that's not good. So just make sure that you understand it once you actually acquire said contract.
That all makes sense. It is mind-boggling to think like how many people actually don't sign their contract that they sent out. For them.
It's so it's crazy.
Yeah.
Like there was this huge post in the Facebook group. Just so you guys all know, we have a private but large free Facebook group online called the Legal Paige community, and you can just like type that into the search bar in Facebook and we'll let you in. There's thousands of business owners in there, and lots of people like ask Q&A. Myself and my legal team monitor that group, so we're always in there tag teaming answers. But someone literally posted last week that they had already provided all the services and like the event was over, and then something happened and they realized they didn't sign the contract because they had to pull the contract up because
Oh
they needed
boy.
to look at it. And then you're in the position of like, wait a second,
Oh
this
gosh.
is my issue. And they were already in a sticky, not so fun
Good old
situation with a
stomach
client.
dropping situation.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
gosh.
I mean, like, and then you sometimes clients are like lawyers too, and it's just like, just
It's like
don't.
probably the scariest situation.
Yeah, I'm like, just don't add that to your like, what if repertoire. It's not worth it.
It's not, no. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I like your points where you're just saying like, get something, have
Yeah,
some type of written thing where both of you sign it that clearly lays out those simple pieces that are important to have in a contract. Yeah,
100%. Yep.
yeah. Simple first step, everyone. Just do it. My
Just
goodness,
just just
just
get a
freaking do it.
contract, at least something on paper. Um, we have the freedom to contract in the US. So that means that you can write your own contract. I do tell people that too. Like just utilize the Google, like Google University can at least get you somewhere, or a lot of my blogs on the legalpage.com can get you somewhere. And then draft up at least some provisions surrounding what you guys are doing, what services you're providing, what they're paying you, that kind of thing. Or like you mentioned, Taylor, there's a lot of um, templates and things that you can find out there in like CRM systems and things along those lines. I know you had that as a question for me. So I just wanted to tell people like there
Yeah.
is that amazing resource for you to get started. It's like it's free, you might as well use it.
Right. Just work off of it. Right. Just,
Mhm.
yeah. So I'll be honest. So my first ever contract I created, and this was when I was like in the beginning parts of my wedding photography journey, and I was doing it part time. I found like the most simple contract on Google. I mean, this thing was probably like 2 pages. No joke, like 2 pages long.
You and
So,
everybody else. I mean, I
yeah.
will say it I don't recommend getting a contract from Google.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you that. Like, I'm sure. I like. Does it just make you cringe when you see
It does. It's like one of those cringy red flag moments for me. But again, I will say I understand where you're at in your business journey. And
Yeah,
it's Taylor, like you did it. I didn't do it, but I know other people have done it.
yeah,
I would say it's like a good 50-50 split. I don't know. I'm just conjecturing here. But you're just trying to get something in place. And I understand that. Just know like there's probably a huge portion of it that isn't valid and isn't going to like hold up.
right,
But
right.
some of it will probably.
Yeah,
So Google contracts are no. I think CRM, like whatever's in your like back end platform, is a good starting place. But again, it's honestly usually not created by attorneys. I don't know. A lot of people don't know that. It's oftentimes
yeah,
not created by someone who is an expert in the field. So that can open up some potholes for you that you just don't really want to step in. And then, uh, you know, next best is like get an actual drafted contract from a contract lawyer that is an expert in the field. So those are like the steps.
yeah. I will say, I know I personally have invested in a few contracts from your business, and gosh, the peace of mind that it's given me is astronomical. But I know that like some people, like you said, it's that overhead piece of it that people are in a sense like they're hesitant to purchase something. But like personally, I know that other people, and I agree with them, say like this is one of those things that you should invest in early on because of the headaches that it will save you down the road. So I'm sure you can obviously agree to that, but
Yeah, I think there's a lot of other ways you can save money in your business, but I can guarantee that Googling a contract isn't one of them.
no,
Uh,
no,
it's actually going to probably cost you down the road, and so just don't open that door. It's not one you want to walk into. So
yeah,
try to at least put a little bit of overhead into this part of your business. And here's the thing, you have to take a step back. I don't think photographers honestly don't have a huge issue buying really expensive gear. And
No, never.
sometimes you buy that lens that you think you're always going to use, and then you just go back to the moneymaker, the one that you know the best and that you love. And so now you have like a $2,000, $3,000 lens that's sitting in your bag that you don't use that often. Here's the thing, a contract template, at least like from the Legal Paige shop, less than $500, and you're going to use it for all of your clients. It's like a
Hmm.
constant thing that you're going to use. So you're going to get your money's worth. And it has longevity in your business. You're going to be able to use it again and again and again. And it's not one thing that like you might use, it's you have to, like you said, Taylor.
Right.
So you're
Yeah.
going to utilize it every single time you work with a client. Also, I think people are scared of prices, and prices of attorneys are like really alarming to people. So just know that like if you were to go hire a lawyer down the street, you're talking like $200, $300 an hour. You're talking thousands of dollars just to get a custom drafted contract. I can get you about 99.9% of the way there with one of our contracts. And that's the beauty. I honestly, Taylor, this is one of the beautiful things about the internet is it has allowed lawyers to be able to reach more people and offer services to more people in like a vast mass arena. And it has allowed us to bring down prices of our services in like a contract template form. So I truly think you're getting the biggest bang for your buck if you're utilizing a contract template from somewhere like the Legal Paige, or there's other virtual contract shops online too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. And I also think that contracts also show you take your job seriously. Like you are a professional in this
Totally.
industry, and you're showing that just by sending them like a real legal looking contract. Like it doesn't just look, it actually is legal. But it makes a
Yeah,
huge difference.
Yeah, I have a story for you about this, and it'll really resonate with photographers. So, there was this couple that had our photography contract, and they were starting to like get into the luxury wedding event space. They were bidding for a celebrity wedding. And I don't know if any of you have ever done this or understood how it works, but for the most part, they already have a planner or an organizer for their event, and they're vetting everybody. Because sometimes you're having to send NDAs and all of that kind of stuff. They were able to use our contract and send it over to them. And the planner said that the clients and the planner felt most comfortable working with this photography couple because they had the most professional contract.
Wow.
And because I think I'm sure along the lines or something that they learned along the way was the NDA confidentiality thing. When they sent their contract, they were able to front that conversation and say, we changed up this model release clause knowing that your clients probably aren't comfortable with it. This is what we're comfortable with, but we're willing to negotiate on it because we want to do what your clients would be, okay with. And I think that as well allowed them to book it. So this was their biggest package they ever booked, over $15,000. And it all started with a really solid contract. So you're right. Like it makes you look more professional. It makes you look like you got your shiz together. And when they sent it, they were showing that they understood what was in the contract. And it was easy to read. The clients liked it. The planner liked it. And then I think they just came to a mutual agreement on what they were doing with, the images and the usage of that. And they booked that wedding.
Wow.
So cool of a story.
That's
And
wild.
yeah, I love to tell that one. I literally was at a conference and sitting down at a table, and these two, it was like a dinner event after the conference, and they told me this, and I was like, this is the best
Whoa.
story ever.
I'm gonna share that to the freaking world. But because you're right. I mean, like those opportunities would be missed if you didn't have a professional legal contract in place. That's just how it is. I mean, you're missing out on opportunities to grow and expand your business because you're not investing in something that is so crucial. Because
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yep, go ahead.
imagine if you were trying to do that when the bidding was started. Like you
Mm,
were trying to get it all figured out, and you didn't already have a little bit of previous knowledge of utilizing this contract, working with clients, like having it all set up to send. And if it takes you too long, you're going to miss out on opportunities like that as well. So
Yeah.
that, I would say, that's another reason why it's better to do it now versus later.
Absolutely. Yeah, I always say to photographers who are getting started in their entrepreneurial journey, like you have to have all your back end stuff established and set up before you really feel like you can start growing your clientele. Like it's important to start booking sessions and so on. But if you don't have all your systems in place, it's really
Right.
hard to manage everything that you need to do on the back end of your business. Because if you don't have those workflows set up, it's stressful, and then you're just going to increase that stress and that worry about what you need to do for your business if you don't have those systems in place. And contract is one of those ones you just need to have in place.
Totally.
And I'm sure it helps. Like I've got my business background, going to got my master's in business and all that, like, so I understand like business, because I know a lot of photographers, in a way, like from what I've heard, that they usually come from a different unique background. They
Hmm.
might be have been like a social worker, or they are a graphic designer, or they just went to school for something outside of business, went to nursing, all these different types of fields. So business is a whole different beast for them. So but that's why, like, I always say, like, have these systems in place, learn what you need to do to ensure you are set up for success and for the safety and protection of yourself and your business.
You nailed it. Couldn't have said it better.
Well, thanks. Have you ever seen like any contracts, like you've read through them and you're like, oh, that's just not good? Like, like you've seen like certain things that they put in there that are just, they should not.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. First thing is using the word deposit versus the word retainer or booking fee or reservation fee.
Mm,
I like the word retainer. I think there's some legal thoughts out there that it's so tied to like a lawyer retainer. And there
mm,
is most of the case law. This is like how cases go through in court's interpretation and opinions. That's what case law is. When I say that,
gotcha.
they're basically making the laws. That is the law on how to interpret contracts. And there's some thoughts and theories out there that, well, all the case law is about lawyer client retainers. um, Deposits, however, are all rooted in landlord tenant law.
Mm,
And deposits are
interesting.
refundable for the most part under every single landlord tenant law in every single state. You're going to have case law that says, nope, this should have been refunded. Yes, for various reasons. So don't give them the argument that a deposit can be refundable if XYZ doesn't occur. I always say retainer is the best word. I just also think there's enough case law out there that it's really commonplace to use when you say non-refundable retainer, everybody understands what that means. You do, the clients do. It's really common use of that term. You can also say non-refundable booking fee or non-refundable reservation fee, but you just need to explain what that means in your contract. So that is a mistake that I often see is, why is it non-refundable? And this is in your fee section. And like, why? It's because you're
Mm,
basically blocking off that date and saying no to everything else. So it's a huge opportunity cost. And usually there's some administrative things going on in the back end and services that you are performing prior to the in-person services that you perform. So all of that should be in a non-refundable retainer. Um, Also in fee clauses, I oftentimes see no language surrounding like upgrading or downgrading or how that can go. And then photographers kick themselves because this is especially prominent right now. I think in today's economy, people are starting to realize like how expensive things are getting, and they start acquiring all these vendors for a wedding. And I feel like photography ends up being the first thing they cut down on, or videography. Like they know they need the DJ there, and they know they need a cake, and they know they need a caterer, but like maybe they can just reduce the amount of hours that these other service providers are there for. You're necessary. You're a necessary vendor to be there. But maybe they booked one of your highest packages and they remember that you had two lower packages and now they want to move down. You need to have no downgrades language in your fee clause in that circumstance. So that has certainly happened before.
Yeah, that's really good. So, and I mean, I didn't even think about the term with like deposit and retainer. Like, I never even thought that was like a thing, to be honest. Like, the fact that they are so different. Because yeah, like when you are rent, I remember like my first apartment I got with my wife. They used the word deposit, and then, I of course when my first contracts that I created, I used the word deposit because that's what people mostly just think of when they are putting like that first payment down for something. So, interesting point. I had no clue
And
about
you
that.
know that that's probably going to be refunded if you do what you need to do when you leave the apartment.
Right.
So just non-refundable language. I honestly, it's just your fee clause is the most important clause, and it's always at the top. I would say that's probably the next thing that I always see when I read through contracts is you're like burying that in the contract. Like that should be clause number one. Clients
Yeah,
care about how much they're paying you and what happens to that payment. And
absolutely.
so lay all that out in the beginning. And then, of course, have cancellation, rescheduling clauses. Artistic style clause, I think it might be like a given that people assume that other people get that in the photography world, but they don't. And you
No.
have an ever evolving style. And sometimes they'll like book you and expect you to edit in a very different way. And you're like, wait a second. No, like, what you see is what you get, or like a
Right.
slight variation of that due to my artistic style. But like say you're really into like contrast and darker shadows and things along those lines, and now they want you to like edit with bright exposure and like all these highlights, and you're
Basically the
like, wait a
complete
second,
opposite.
I'm
Yeah.
so confused. So that kind of thing should be in your contract as well. Last thing that I will say, this is all like photography service related. Of course, you need like boilerplate provisions, general provisions that are super important in contracts. I don't really want you writing those yourself though, because those
No,
can
I'm
be an
good.
issue with other like cross references and things in contracts that will invalidate portions of your contract. So just don't write those yourself. But archiving is a big one. So
Mm,
just making it super clear at the beginning of your relationship that it is their duty to archive within a certain period of time, no matter how much you do in terms of backing up. And we all have our systems in place for that. Or if you have like a cloud-based system that's online for eternity. I don't know if you heard about this, but I think it was last year, like one of those cloud-based services shut down. And a bunch of photographers were stuck with like having to either move or, of course, then links. And you've got clients with things that maybe they didn't download in time. And it can just be a mess. So, putting it in your contract first and foremost to lay that foundation. And then, of course, explaining that in the workflow, like when they get
yeah.
the image delivery, make sure you download within this certain amount of time kind of thing. So that's a good one to have as well.
No, that's a good point. Yeah, because there is always that fear of like pictures are just going to disappear out of
Well, you
all
just can't
systems that you have.
guarantee anything. So
Right.
limit your liability in your contract that you can't guarantee it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's why like when like personally what I like to do is like lay out all like the simple things that they want to know about what they're going to get, like what deliverables are they going to get and how
Yeah.
that really correlates into the contract. But people like just to be told, and that's why I like your the way that you laid out your contracts, like the templates that I get and such, is that it's almost like a fourth grader can understand it. It's just very clear, and like that's how it should be for the people that you're serving that are hiring you for your service. Like it really should be so simple that a fourth grader can understand what you are providing. you know because if you don't lay it out clearly, then they're just going to have more questions, and then also I honestly think that it hurts the experience that they're getting a little bit.
Yeah, if you send them a really like lengthy contract that's just full of legal mumbo jumbo, it doesn't look good on your end. Like it honestly
Yeah.
just looks like you're sending them something probably from the internet.
Yeah.
That's not tailored to your client experience, to you and your services that you provide in your business policies. So one thing again, when I was creating our contract templates, another thing that people should know about our templates is I work with industry thought leaders on this and educators in this space, and they review all of our contracts. They heavily critique it. And so we are constantly working with people to ensure that our contracts are up to date with what's going going on in the industry, but they give us feedback like, hey, my audience would probably want to know X. And so then I go into memos and comments on the side and I explain things. So when you get a contract template from us, it's not just like a fill in the blank, good luck, peace be with you kind of thing. Like, I really hope it goes well.
Right.
I'm going to walk you through the contract, and the important clauses, I'm going to have comments on the side on like why you would change this or what you would change, what this clause means. If you do this, then do this kind of thing. So that's really important to me with our contract templates. And you'll get that with anyone that you purchase and upload. So I think again, education is important as well as the actual contract that you're getting.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's all really important and critical information there. So is there any other like little final pieces of advice or insight that you think is just really important to share with those listening in today?
Yeah, I think when you're beginning, you're probably going to be a default like sole proprietorship. And as you start working in your business, you're going to start having a little bit more risk and liability involved when you build your clientele. When that happens, and you'll know when it happens, there's a lot of people that feel like you need to become an LLC and register your business right away. That is best practice, and that is how I would advise someone to do something. But it, it's okay if you're a sole proprietor to begin with. I don't want people to be scared about that, because if you have a contract, you're separating kind of your business from your personal as much as possible. Like, you're doing a good job. You're really doing okay. And your contract is your first line of defense. But your second line of defense is how your business is registered.
Mm,
So registering an LLC is oftentimes very inexpensive in most states. New York and California, I'm really sorry, it's not as
yeah, it
inexpensive in those
sucks.
states.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's a little, and it's also just a little more cumbersome to
Yeah,
get going, but it still provides you a huge shield around your business. So you'll
absolutely.
know at that point when it's worth it. And so people, and again, it's like facts and circumstances, case by case basis. Sometimes I'd tell people like, no, you're probably best as a sole proprietorship, get business insurance and use your contract really well. And other people, I'd be like, this is a no brainer. It's $70 or $100. Like, go get an LLC.
Right.
So that's your second line of defense, is this bubble that's surrounding your business. And it keeps everything risk and liability wise within that bubble. So it wouldn't permeate to your personal assets or things you've just worked really hard for in life. Like, you really want your business and personal to stay separate. So
Absolutely.
that's your second line of defense usually. If you're a sole proprietor, I think insurance would be your second line of defense. But then I say insurance. So then insurance is the last thing that I would suggest that you get. And the reason that I say all this is because your contract is going to be interpreted before insurance kicks in most cases, unless it's like a massive, like an injury situation. And probably your contract isn't going to cover that, insurance would. But most cases, your contract's going to be interpreted first, and then your LLC bubble would protect you, and then your insurance is going to kick in. So those three are really important to have. Oh,
Yeah.
shoot. Did I
No,
lose you?
no, you're good. You're good. Yeah, no, I'll edit that part out. The weird pause. Yeah, it just froze for a second, so you're good. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I like to finish my sentences because you can edit it out usually.
yes, I appreciate that. No, that's all really insightful information, and like, because personally, I created an LLC because of for my family's protection in a way too. Like, I can't imagine something happening to my business where then they have to come after our assets, which ultimately affect my family. And so that's why like creating an LLC was a huge a huge thing that was like just top of the list importance for me to handle. So yeah, and I do live in New York, so I do understand that it costs a little bit more, but it's fine. It's fine. It's just a part of living here, and it's whatever. But yeah, that's really interesting. Like, yeah, like your contract, the LLC protecting you, and then your insurance, and it's, yeah, just like that's why you invest in those, is because it's your line of defenses for your family and you personally. So that's really good. I love
Yeah,
that.
and I always just tell people like you're not a brick and mortar. There's so much more you have to do with brick and mortar businesses. Some of you might have like a rental space or things along those lines, so you understand what I'm saying here.
Yeah.
Your overhead is much higher in those situations. So honestly, if you're just doing a contract, and probably setting up your LLC and getting a little bit of insurance in your first year or two, you're sitting really well for very limited overhead.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, thank you. Seriously, all of the information you shared today has been so helpful and insightful, and I really do know that it's probably been so beneficial for those listening in. So, thank you for sharing all that. Now, where can everyone follow along and be able to invest into your contract templates if they're interested, and even just follow along the free resources that you provide as well?
Yeah, so thelegalpage.com, Paige. It is a play
So
on
clever.
my first name. And so there you can find all of the contracts, but you can find all of our resources as well. We have lots of free downloads that you can get. The Legal Page Facebook group and community is the next that I would say if you're just like interested, it's a good place to social listen and really see what people are asking, see what we're responding with, other business owners that have had experience in that situation chime in. So it's a cool group to just like social listen into. And I'm not like pitching a Facebook group. If you're not into it, like, and you don't like Facebook groups, you don't need to join. But I'm
Right.
going to put it out there for people because you can ask one-on-one questions there. I can't answer one-on-one questions in my DMs or in email because of attorney-client privilege and lawyer ethics and responsibilities.
Totally
So
get
we do
that.
it in a group setting in the Facebook group. And now you can post as anonymous members, which is great
Love
if
that.
you're worried about that. So those are great places. And then if you like social media, the Legal Page on social media as well, we have lots of good educational reels. And if you want like a little bit of behind the scenes of like what it's like running my business in my personal life, I post that as well.
I love that. I feel like those little personal touches are so great to see, because there's so many aspects to running the business that are like not so fun, but it is so nice to like see the personal side of people's lives and on their social media. So, but yeah, I'll be sure to put all of that information into the description of this episode. And Paige, seriously, thank you so much for being here today and being on today's episode,
You're
sharing all your
welcome.
insight and your wisdom. It was so wonderful having you on. And yeah, just thank you for being willing to do this and sharing all of your wonderful knowledge around contracts and just the importance of them in general.
Of course. Thank you for having me, Taylor. It was a true delight.
Good. So good to hear. So good to hear. Thank you, everybody listening in, and I will see you all next week.